Speed work works if you do. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. Thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today, but a quick reminder, if you guys would please click like down below, it would be greatly appreciated. If you aren't following or subscribed, please do so. And if you guys would be so kind as to drop me a comment down under here, I would appreciate that also. Thank you. It can be to give your thoughts or just to say hello. All right, let's get over to the topic, speed work or dynamic effort work. Speed work works if you do. So here's the thing. Obviously, I'm a big fan of this. I've coached a lot of powerlifters. I've coached a lot of fighters. And I find for both these groups, dynamic effort work is extremely effective. And I think some of the best rebuttals I've seen by people who claim, well, it doesn't work. It's been people like, I'm not going to go into who it is, the guy who did the whole RPE thing. And he obviously has coached many high-level lifters, but I think what people forget with his rebuttal is you can't claim something doesn't work when it's produced dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of champions in multiple sports. Other scientists have looked at it and found merit in it. When you do an at-home experiment on it using lifters who don't practice the method ever. So obviously, the impact is going to be different. And I think that's the biggest rebuttal against it was the guy hooking up TENS units and things. All right, look, it's Mike Tertier, that was his name. But he did it on people who haven't been doing speed work for a year. So obviously their rates of force production and stuff are going to be lower. They're implementing a new method they've never adapted to. Silly. And then trying to see what short-term, immediate, acute benefit it had. Well, that's not how training works in the human body. It's pretty much an absurd idea, and that doesn't debunk it in any way. But let's get over to the point. When we comes to speed work, what are we doing? We're usually doing 1 to 3 reps. 1 to 3 reps. You're going to see me doing triples on bench here, doubles on squat and deadlift. All right, more high sets. Usually 6 to 12 sets are done back to back with short breaks. We're running weights that are going to vary. They're going to vary. So let's call them close to 50%, right? So when I'm running bands and chains, a lot of times that's my cumulative overall average strength curve is around 50%. So what does that mean? If you deadlift 600, that means your median in the middle needs to be around 300. So, well, what would that entail? Well, exactly what you just saw me doing there. 150 pounds of bands, 225 bar weight. So that means the middle average in between, because again, top versus bottom, going to be around 300, right? Around 300 approximately, so around 50%. And you could take it to just straight 50% with straight weight. That's a good starting point, okay? So again, that's kind of the idea. The same thing you saw there with a bench. You could look at that and go, well, that's 135 plus 50 pounds of bands. What's our average? 25 in the middle. Because again, top versus bottom of the lift. So you would look at that and go about 160. Well, I'm right now, my closed grip bench is only at 325. It'll be going up. I've done it for 365 before. But again, I've trimmed down, got a little leaner, gotten older, but I'm going to get it back up to that or higher. But so exactly the same idea, right? The math carries. This is what we're looking for, around 50%. So why so light? So that we can explode the weight. So here's the idea. With the speed work, what you are trying to do is when it comes to your maxes, you want the concentric rep time to be about the same amount of time as a max. So 3 reps on bench or 2 reps on deadlift or squat is going to take you that same amount of concentric time is going to be about the same as a 1 rep max. You're looking for about 3.5 seconds, right? 3 seconds to 3.5 seconds. Ideally is probably close to what we're shooting for, maybe a hair under. So what does that do? It teaches you to explode as hard as possible and to accelerate a weight, even though it's a lighter weight, with the same amount of force production you would sustain for the same amount of time you would on a max, even though it's carried over double or triple the distance. The idea here is the same. So what you're going to get is transference. And now people say, well, why does that matter? Why wouldn't you just max more? Which one's going to beat you up more? All right, let's say your squat is 500 pounds. You do a 500-pound squat. How fatiguing is that? right? Your system needs time to recover. You probably aren't doing it more than once a week. So you see where we're going? This is done for a secondary set. So you would do a max effort on one day and then you do dynamic on the other. Well, you could come in and do 10 sets of that with the speed work. You're going to get your heart rate up. You're going to get some metabolic fatigue. But in terms of the stress on your body, it's still technically going to be lower than the max. It's going to be less stress on your joints. But we've now trained the response. We've now trained maximum force production. And yes, you do get faster doing this, right? Speed box squats and stuff against bands like I'm doing here. Guys, oh my God. Do that for any sort of athlete who needs explosive power on a field or a contact sport. The carryover is tremendous. So we have our own speed strength benefits that carry over to every other sport on earth while still transferring to powerlifting also. Okay. See, that one makes sense. Everyone gets that. No one wants to argue that. They all understand. Oh yeah, that definitely carries over to kickboxing or boxing or football. Yeah, we totally get it. It just doesn't carry over to powerlifting. Except that it does, because what are we doing? We're practicing not only that skill that will carry to your max, what else are we getting from it? Practice, tons and tons of first reps, having to set up over and over and over at a moment's notice. We also find our grips, we find our foot positions, our stances, everything that lets us move the bar fastest. Because when you do a bunch of sets back to back, you know which ones were faster. You start intrinsically learning what stance and toe position gives you the most speed and power on a squat or a deadlift. All right, this carries over to your skill in your setup. It also forces you to practice setting up, walking bars out, unracking, getting into positions extremely fast, because these are 30 seconds apart. All right. This makes you really, really good at setting up for first reps and getting in and just hitting a max. All right, there's an enormous practice and skill transfer to that on top of it. All right, and that cannot be discounted in this discussion. Then what's the other thing? Do we gain muscle from it? Yes, we absolutely get bigger from it. And people say, oh, you're not, because you're not close to failure. But when the work density is added up, yeah, you really are. You're hitting the fast twitch muscle fibers on every rep, which is usually what we talk about effective rep theory, the last 5 reps before failure is getting those reps. But we're getting it on all the reps because of the explosiveness, and we're doing it repeatedly over and over and over. You are absolutely getting an effect. And if you don't believe me in terms of that, then why do plyometrics and jumps cause hypertrophy in athletes in the lab? Box jumps and plyometrics have absolutely built quads, glutes, and calves in athletes in the lab, demonstrated. So if anyone's going to argue you're not going to gain muscle from this, and keeping in mind this is really easy to recover from, it is going to have a hypertrophic benefit. You are going to get bigger from it. And everyone who does this style of training observes this and knows this firsthand. The only time speed doesn't work is when you don't put the effort in to try to explode as hard as you can and focus. It is lack of practice and lack of working hard on it that causes it not to work. It will work if you do. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.